Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midierror Meets podcast, the monthly music podcast where we talk to a wide range of people from the music world. This month we're speaking to Andrew Huang, who is a phenomenally talented YouTuber, musician, producer, composer, sound designer, educator, and now software developer. There is now a GoFundMe page for the podcast. If you'd like to support it with a few pounds or dollars, that would be greatly appreciated. Everything will go back into the running of the podcast. But without further ado, let's go straight into the interview. And the first question I asked Andrew was about his musical beginnings.
That's a good one. I guess my mother played the piano and sang, so there's a lot of that going on in our household. Definitely remember her playing a lot of tricky Chopin pieces, a lot of these like arpeggiated sort of piano lines or runs, really fast stuff. She was quite a good pianist. And other early memories, I mean, I think that's definitely the earliest because for the first several years of my life, pretty much my parents listened to classical music and we only had a piano in the house.
Superb. I mean, I think that's, I was speaking to DJ Rap on my last podcast and it was exactly the same for her growing up, classic, just like total immersion in classical music.
Yeah. It's interesting though too, because they listened to plenty of pop, but for some reason that didn't really come into my life until later. I don't know if they were going through a phase or if I just don't remember it, but it was like very classical for a few years. And then, I don't know, maybe they were shielding me from it or something. Those nasty pop lyrics or whatever. But eventually, you know, I got into like the Beatles and Queen and ABBA through them as well. And then, of course, you know, my school friends would be telling me about like Michael Jackson or whatever.
Excellent. And when was there a desire for you to like play the piano? Did you start playing it from an early age? When did you go from being the listener to like prodding instruments and pressing notes?
Yeah, I definitely got onto the piano as soon as you know, I had the motor control as an infant, but or maybe not an infant, a toddler. But the whole musical thing was just one of a lot of interests when I was a kid. It didn't really take over until I was a teenager, although my parents did really place a high importance on piano lessons. So I was learning that from as early as possible. And I did up until grade 6, I think, of conservatory piano, which has been a really great foundation for a lot of things, even though I think it's not the whole picture. And I think there's so many different avenues where you can learn about different aspects of music. But yeah, it was just sort of like one of a lot of things that I did. It was like another activity, the way that you would, you know, go on a hike or paint or draw, watch TV. So it wasn't really until I was 12 or 13 that I felt like, oh, music is the best thing ever. And that's all I want to do. Probably after discovering like, I don't know, Nirvana and like a bit more like aggressive music that I kind of, you know, my eyes were opened and it wasn't all just happy pop from the 60s and 70s or, you know, old white dead dudes from 200 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing time when you start to discover music like that your parent, you know, like beyond your parents' knowledge, and you start to like get immersed in your own little discoveries. Yeah, like you say, especially things that maybe your parents don't like, or the lyrics are rude, or the content, yeah, like dark. Yeah. Are there any sort of bands that stood out for you at that point?
I think Radiohead and the Smashing Pumpkins were very big ones for me at that kind of pivotal time. And in a lot of ways, I feel like they hold up. You know, the stuff that they were doing on their records was so, in some ways, you know, forward thinking. All of it I felt was very layered and, you know, arrangement wise, really interesting. You know, neither of them were just like two guitars, a bass, and a drum type of bands. They always like had a lot of fun things going on, a lot of interesting production choices, definitely interesting songwriting choices. So those stand out to me for sure. And then at the same time, I think I was getting introduced to a whole bunch of different jazz music from my high school music teacher. So, bebop was really interesting to me. And then had a huge Miles Davis phase. So I feel like those were sort of the biggest acts, I guess. But also at some point I got really into Autechre and Square Pusher. And so it was kind of like, those were probably the big prongs, the electronic, very experimental side of things, and then what might be more mainstream or alternative rock. And then the learning about jazz for the first time. Yeah.
That's fascinating, man. That's really incredible because I think those artists you mentioned, like Autechre, Square Pusher, they definitely have a foot in the jazz world. Probably Square Pusher's the bridge between those two. So I can see how they would have crossed over. Crossed over for you. And also Radiohead, I suppose, because they really transformed. They really have they've always sort of. They've never stayed the same. They've always pushed themselves, haven't they? With everything they've done, including that album. What was it, Amnesiac, which was really techy and weird and very sort of IDM and glitchy.
Yeah, it's been super cool. Following them for this long, and also Tom York's solo stuff, Johnny Greenwood's film scores. They're all very, very creative on another level. Yeah.
And then, so you studied, you would speak on another podcast about studying classical composition, but that you felt it wasn't, you didn't like the way it was delivered. Could you elaborate on that?
So I went to university. I went to York University here in Toronto, and they had a great program for music in that I was exposed to a lot of different stuff. So there was courses on Brazilian music and West African drumming and Indian drumming, like tablas, something that I learned for a bit. There was some music production stuff going on. There was a synthesizer course. So there was a huge breadth of stuff that I don't think you would find at a lot of schools, at least not, back in the day when I was going. But the classical side of things, I think there's just not a very good way to teach composition in a classroom, because by its nature, you're going to have 30 students sitting around and one person standing in the front of the room talking and maybe playing some examples, but that's just talking about composition. It's not composing. And I think the learning happens when you actually do something. And so when you'd have these classes like that, and then they'd give you these vague assignments try and do something in the style of this Beethoven sonata that we listened to this class. And then you'd hand that in, you'd get a grade and 2 sentences scrawled on the front of your manuscript. And that just felt like not an effective way at all to learn music. So I switched out of that particular program and just went for a fine arts degree where I was able to kind of more freely explore all the different kind of music offerings that were there. And so that I do definitely credit with expanding my horizons a lot with music, just being able to learn about things that I wouldn't ever otherwise have encountered. But as far as actually learning composition, I think that just has to happen by yourself just doing it. Hopefully getting some tips and tricks along the way and listening and taking things in. But I think it all happens in the act.
Definitely. No, I agree with that as well. And also having been a teacher myself at times, and also having been a student, obviously, in the past, I think you're right in terms of the way that those sorts of lessons can be delivered. There are some subjects that, they feel better when you're actually just doing it and feeling your way around it. Because sometimes delivery is quite subjective.
Yeah, and I think, one-to-one, it could absolutely work. But, just by having to have like one teacher for a whole classroom, it's so hard to really get into the work because you'd want to be able to give each student a fair shake, and you can't listen to 30 pieces in a class and take them in and give feedback and try things out with them.
I just for my own experience, one time I was having a lesson on music history at university, and we were going back through the ages of all music from the early sort of pre-medieval, even, like all the way up to modern day. And I was getting really excited because we were a few weeks into it, and we got into the sort of 80s and 90s, and I was getting really excited going, yeah, we're going to do electronic music. It's going to be like the era that I'm interested in. And our teacher covered one track for the entirety of electronic music. He spoke about the theme from S Express, which is like a rave dance track. And that was it for electronic music. And I just remember being like, so disenfranchised and disillusioned with the whole education system after that like one class. It was mad.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And it's I mean, it's not an enviable position to try and cover that much history in one course, but
and it was very much, he was very much a classically trained gentleman with skills in other areas, but yeah, it's just a sort of as an example. So, I mean, you've talked on other podcasts about your early days making music and selling songs through eBay, and I think that's an incredible idea, man. And it, can you explain briefly what you were doing for that?
Yeah, so I was in my second year at university, and I was starting to think about the summer job that I would have to get, and then I just had this kind of flash of inspiration, really. I still remember it. I was talking with a high school friend on MSN Messenger, if you remember that. Like, this is so vivid to me. I was in my basement apartment chatting away on this like old PC with a friend of mine, and I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but I remember from that conversation having this, light bulb moment where I was like, I think I had been spending a lot of time on eBay. I'd look for good deals on guitar pedals and things like that. And then it all kind of came together when I was like, what if I put up an eBay auction, but instead of it being a product that I'm selling my skill set. And so I started, I think the auction listings would kind of talk about the genres that I was interested in, the equipment that I had, and, what I thought my skill set could cover. And immediately the first auctions I put up would have like little bidding wars. Like a couple of people somehow would stumble upon them, and they'd be like $50, $60, $80. And so I think on average, I would be getting like $100 to $200 per auction. And I would write whatever it was that these people were asking me for. And so it was very unique and usually quite personal stuff, like a song for their wife as an anniversary gift, or there was, I think my first ever one was for this girl who really liked Nine Inch Nails, and she wanted just a Nine Inch Nails sounding instrumental that she could sing over.
Nice.
And there was a lot of people who wanted songs about their pets. It was like a very bizarre, wonderful early internet sort of situation. And I kind of springboarded that into a website where I would post songs based on people's suggestions, and I would just make these songs for free if I thought the idea was interesting, or if I thought I could turn it into kind of a joke. And I wasn't even really thinking about how this would turn out, but of course, if you make something that's quite strange or funny on the internet, it's some of the most shareable kind of content. And so people this was pre-social media, this was 2004, people would like email these links around to their friends. And so that's how I started building an audience. And then some of those people would become my customers for actually commissioned work. So that was how I got started. And, just through that and through networking a bit, that led to proper commercial work. I did some like radio and TV commercials, and that was really the beginning of a career. I never ended up having to get that summer job or any other job.
Thank God for MSN Messenger.
I know, it's bizarre.
It really reminds me of, do you know that David Bowie quote that's he says that about getting out of your comfort zone. He says never work in your comfort zone. Always go a bit beyond your comfort zone. Go out into the ocean until your feet just aren't touching the floor, and then you're in a good space to create. It totally reminds me of what you must have been doing back then on eBay, because you got no idea if someone's going to say, "Oh, I want a breakcore track about my guinea pig giving birth," just something crazy, and you've got to make a song out of it. So it must have been an incredible experience in terms of being adaptable and working with anything.
It was really cool as a learning experience and as a way that to push my own boundaries, because I absolutely would get people asking for a type of music that I had never created before, maybe occasionally one I'd never even heard of before, and I would just have to school myself on it. I would listen to tons of stuff. I thankfully had this classical music theory background that allowed me to do a lot of pretty decent deciphering as to what types of harmony do these genres typically use, that kind of stuff. And so I would, between that and like one contact library, to get an approximation of most popular instruments out there, and then I play guitar, electric bass, a little bit of keyboard and drums, and from that very limited tool set, just trying to recreate like bossa nova, or like I did one song, I think the craziest one I ever did was like this big band, like Benny Goodman style thing. And so I played the upright bass and the drums on it, and then I hired a trumpet player, and I just like did all this pitch shifting and like warping and stuff to get that one trumpet player and on all the different parts I composed to sound like a few different horn sections, and made this pretty convincing big band jazz tune. So yeah, it was super cool. And I think just naturally, I do like being in that place of your feet just not touching the ocean floor. I think that is just where is more exciting to create, and so I just end up there, in my own work too.
Definitely. I mean, it's brilliant, and I think it's translated so well to where you are now as a YouTuber in terms of like the content you deliver, because you're delivering. A lot of people sort of go in a niche and they stick to their thing, and they rise to huge levels of popularity through one direction only. Whereas the way you've come at it and the way your videos are, it's just this absolute broad spectrum of everything to do with making music, sound design, production, foley stuff, and limitation as well. You work a lot with limitation. Where did the, because I think creatively limitation is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Where did you start like working with limitations? Where did that sort of come from?
I think it kind of happened naturally, just because it would be it would come from a place of me exploring a concept. Like if I really wanted to, I got into this kind of foley based music, for instance, and just out of interest of wanting to incorporate more unique sounds in my music, because growing up, you listen to all these things and everybody's playing a proper instrument that they've at least practiced on quite a bit. And I started just feeling like, oh, what if I, use what's lying around here? I've got some paper and a water bottle and pots and pans, and like just seeing, what could be done with that. I think that was where it started. And then the way that the internet works, I guess, kind of made that more pronounced, because the more absurd the item was that I was making music on, or the more focus there was on that limitation, the more compelling the content seemed, because if I just had a piece of music where like occasionally I play a bit of a pot and pan rhythm somewhere, no one's really going to look. But if all the sounds come from pots and pans, well, that's a little more interesting. If all the sounds come from pants, well, that's a million views. So it just kind of like, one thing led to another there. And then I realized that's kind of a very fun, as well as an easy story to tell, to just have this limitation be at the forefront.
Yeah, like your fidget spinner video. It's such a genius idea, because it's not only a great concept in itself. So make a track before the fidget spinner stops spinning. You also put a spin on the idea, which is that you give yourself ages for it to keep spinning, which is amazing. I think that's absolutely genius.
I appreciate that one. Yeah, that's one of my favorite examples of just, using the way that content and YouTube works to one's advantage, because that's not a video that would have worked in any year other than 2017. And I had this single that I was going to be promoting. And so doing the beat on Ableton Push while the fidget spinner spun was just like this perfect, incredibly cheap marketing tool, really. At different times in my career, I've either been very active in terms of looking for those kinds of things and making that kind of like really, super flash in the pan shareables type of stuff. And then at other times, like right now, I feel like I'm not really focused too much on that. And I'm just like creating what's interesting to me and building a bit more of an audience around music production and creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because your videos, I was watching your interview with Nick Batt from Sonic State at Superbooth from a couple of years ago, which was a really fascinating interview. And Nick pointed out about the way that your videos like bridge between the advanced level people and the beginners. And I know from my teaching experience, that's a very difficult sort of line to walk. So you do it really, really well. How do you approach an idea and make sure that it covers like your entire audience?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's something that I haven't been thinking about as much lately, to be honest. I think I've gotten I guess I feel like so many things on my channel have been covered a lot in some of the videos I made a few years ago, that maybe I'm in general going a little bit more intermediate advanced these days. But I always try to think about, what's really interesting about this idea and how can I communicate that in a way that you don't need a whole lot of prior knowledge to understand it. And then, hopefully that means if you're just beginning, you can get enough out of it that it's useful to you. But also if you're, someone who's been doing this for years, we're also looking at something in a bit of a unique way, or the topic itself is interesting enough that you also feel like you're learning a little something new. So I think that's kind of how I look at it. I know one thing that throughout my life always kind of was a weakness, let's say, was that I'm very concise a lot of the time. So like I would really have trouble getting an essay to the right word length, or like my, people I'd be in relationships with were like, you got to communicate more, all those kind of things. But I think this has turned out to be a strength for me on YouTube, because I think I have this skill of like finding the shortest possible way to convey an idea, the shortest and simplest way, which doesn't necessarily work if you're, wanting to write an essay or have a very deep, long conversation. But to like make a snappy video, it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean that's a skill in itself, really. Just being conveying an idea simply. I often think, whenever anyone's thinking of new software or anything like that, like if they can convey exactly what they're making in about 10 words, then it's probably the idea is going to propagate better than if you have to sort of explain it and go, yeah, but then if you go on some really convoluted explanation of what you're making, yeah, simplicity I think is key. Yeah, I think also there's a sort of sense of, I mean, there are loads of film directors that do very clean visuals, but like Wes Anderson style, like very clean, simple colors, not overloading people visually as well. That helps, because I think in your visuals alone, there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of like excitement there as well. So yeah, you really do that stuff really well too, man.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, yeah, I am a big Wes Anderson fan, and I think I actually really appreciate the YouTubers who have this beautiful, like, darker sort of moody thing where, their face is only half lit and then the rest of their room is all dark and like, these deep wood tones and everything. And I feel like that's such a great look, and I don't know how to do it. And my vibe is just like everything's as bright as possible, but it also works.
Yeah,
I did want to add on the topic of communicating those ideas before. I think another big thing is that I'm just always thinking about the results, the musical results. And I feel like I watch so many videos on YouTube about, I don't know, a technique or a piece of gear or something. And, people will go the whole video just talking and you don't get to hear what it is that they're talking about. And so I think that has been just a big thing that, helps for the audience, is like when you're showing them where these things lead you and how they'll be useful in your own process. That's so much better than like, well, here's the list of technical specifications for this product, or like, here's all the other people who are using this in their work. Like, yeah, I think I'm very, very, results driven.
Yeah, I think you translate those things really well, and there is like an immediacy to, I mean, your video you did recently about different time signatures. I mean, even, the immediacy of explaining the, I'm going to forget what they're called now, polymetric and polyrhythm. Like, that was a very instantly, I do, like like you say in the video, it does seem like a complicated idea, but if someone just shows you within 2 or 3 seconds, you know exactly what they're talking about. This is my particular bugbear with modular, which is when someone talks at me for 20 to 30 minutes about a module and I still haven't actually just heard what it does. I just want to hear it, mate,
I think my favorite example of this was I was watching a demo of a guitar like rack effect. And they showed it for like a few seconds right at the beginning of the video. And then the rest of it, you actually were hearing it, but the guy would like have it off screen. So you were watching him play and then he'd like fiddle with the settings and you wouldn't see anything about what he was doing. So just, a little bit of thought about that goes a long way.
Definitely. I love your studio, by the way, your completely white studio. It's amazing. Is there?
It's just
go on.
I really love being in art galleries. That's sort of like the main inspiration. And I think it's been a little bit of a love-hate thing. Some people are like, "How do you stand it in there?" And other people are, really appreciative of the openness and blankness of it.
I think it's amazing. The only thing that does worry me is, how do you know there's not like a giant polar bear in there somewhere and you just can't see him?
I guess I never will. I'll never know. It's a risk I'm going to take.
That is literally the only thing I think. I think it's an amazing studio. Is there any gear that you've got there that you use that you've had from like childhood? Is there any piece of equipment that you've sort of grown up with and gone, I am never going to let this drum machine or
I mean, my
go?
first guitar, I don't think I could ever let go of. I've got this white and gold Ibanez Talman from I think late 80s, early 90s. I got it used when I first started playing guitar in my teens, and Yeah, I thought, it's got too much sentimental value to me, even though for probably most of my gear, I'm not that sentimentally attached. But I'm just trying to like look around here and see if there's anything. Oh, you know what? There's a few. I really like the Boss digital delay pedals. I think I've got. At one point, I had like the DD2, DD3, DD5, DD6. I don't know. They each had their own slightly different character with how especially with what happened when you changed the delay time knob live. I think I still have two of those, and I just really like those. Man, no, there's probably not much else. There's a lot of shuffling and cycling of gear over here. Although a few newer things that I've gotten in the last couple of years will probably stay around for a very long time. My Genelec monitors. Usually I track my vocals through Universal Audio LA610. And now that I've gotten into modular, there's a few like choice modules that I feel like will just always have application. So yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? I think through my experience and the people I know, there's always a piece of gear that you just really connect with, and sometimes it's totally illogical. Like it's really difficult to use it, but you just love this weird box that everyone else thinks is a bit rubbish.
Oh yeah, do you have one of those?
I guess mine it has to be the FBO1, which is a really obscure,
never used one.
Really obscure FM 4-operator FM synth, which is one of those black boxes with like no knobs on it. It's just you have to program it through SysX.
Oh yeah.
And it took me 9 years to make an editor for it. So it's a tough, complicated beast. You prolifically released albums. Everything I read said you've released 50 albums. By now, is that a bigger number?
I think it's hard to say because I don't really count them or anything. But and it's also, I think there's been a little bit of a weird... Well, I'll say it can't be much more than that because I've been less prolific in the last year. I've been doing a lot more with videos, and I just put out an app. I put out an online course, but I think we're an interesting time where the line between EP and album is kind of blurry. I think it's more common for people to do what would be called a double album before, what would have to be spread across 2 discs. Mm-hmm. But I've done a lot of releases that are in kind of the 4 to 8 song range. And sometimes I'm tempted to call them albums, and other times I'm not sure if that quite fits. Maybe not on the 4-song ones, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of them, and I love the scale of the diversity within your music.
Thank you.
It really is fantastic. Mike Oldfield's album Tubular Bells that came out in the 70s was pretty controversial because I think one side was one track, and people were like, "Oh, you can't do that. That's not an album. One track on one side, it's ridiculous."
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, everyone likes to have their neat categories that things fit into, but I think the more we press forward, there's just more things that are possible. So yeah, now with Spotify, it's like anything of any length could probably go on. Actually, I did try to look into what the maximums of various kinds would be on Spotify. Like, what's the most number of tracks you could have on a release, or what's the longest, duration of time that could be allowed on a release? I didn't really find a clear answer to that, but seems like you could do just about anything.
Yeah, I wonder, they must have parameters. There must be sort of limitations that they have, like shortest and longest amount of tracks. Yeah, I wonder if you could do like an 1,000-track album, like worlds.
Yeah.
How many
like
discs, how many CDs does that come on?
2 hour long.
Yeah,
track.
so your app then, it looks amazing, man. Can you tell us about like the development of it? When was the inception of the idea for that?
Yeah, so this app is called Flip, and it's only in the App Store right now, but we're very much looking into bringing it to Android. So I thought of this first probably about 5 years ago, and I was really just thinking about the sampling workflow and how to make it a little quicker, how to make it more spontaneous, because for me, there's usually a barrier between finding a sound I want to use and then actually creating with it. You know, if you're dealing with a sampler, you've got to have it all set up. You got to have the right connections, and you will be doing some trimming. I remember, working with an MPC, you've got that like jog wheel thing, or, every device has its own way of doing it. And then also, with the DAW, you have to decide, like, are you going to drag it into a drum rack or, map it across the keys. There's just a few too many little hurdles, and they're not big hurdles, but it would be enough that if I found a really interesting sound and recorded it on my phone, I would most likely never end up actually using it, because I'd have to send it to my computer and then, bring it into Ableton, decide, what plugins and all that kind of stuff. So I started thinking about basically what the ideal workflow would be for if I were out and about, came across an interesting sound and wanted to make music with it. And it started as an idea for a hardware device, but I quickly realized that it would be much more effective as an app, because I wouldn't even have to think about bringing this hardware with me. I'd already have it on me no matter where I was, if it was on my phone. And the sampling workflow that we managed to get into it is pretty sweet. It's basically, a tap to record a sound, and as soon as you stop recording, it's already on a pad, it's already mapped across the keyboard, it's already going through a chain of effects. We'd like to add some more effects, but right now we've got 4 effects plus parametric EQ. So it's really quick, and I think that's one of its greatest strengths. But also, as far as what else is available in the world of apps, I think it's one of the more robust options, because you can sequence, you can have different length tracks within a pattern. Like each channel can have its own length, each automation lane can have its own length, and we have 19 automatable parameters, and you can just draw automation curves with your finger, which is really cool. There's some live effects that can be applied with these sliders on one page, and you can arrange the song arrangement, the pattern chaining is like super fast as well, just dragging and dropping really. So I feel like I came up with a lot of these ideas early on, and then eventually, just about coming up on 3 years ago, I found the developers that I would be able to partner with to bring it to life, because I'm very much not a coder. But we kind of went back and forth on Slack and Skype a whole bunch over the last couple of years to kind of bring it to life, and they definitely helped with fleshing out some of these ideas, and I think it's turned out to be a really great tool for a lot of people already.
Yeah, it looks fantastic, man. It looks really good, especially because in early days of sampling, I suppose we were quite limited in how long we were able to sample for.
True.
So yeah, it's amazing to have that on-hand immediacy. Can you layer multiple samples in it? How many tracks are you able to put together in it?
Yeah, so it's a 9-channel sampler, and there's no sample layering, but we are actually working on an update where we will have slicing. And so you could do kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with how the OP1 drum kits work, but basically you could load in a WAV file that's got 30 sounds in it, and then slice those up, and those would be mapped across the keys. So we will eventually have, you could use one channel as your full drum kit, let's say. That's an update coming soon. But for now, it's one sample of up to 60 seconds per pad, and we've got 9 pads.
Excellent, man. That workflow sounds to me very much like the Pocket Operator KO.
Yeah, for sure. When that came out, I was a little mad.
I love that thing.
Yeah, it's definitely workflow wise, it's quite similar for getting samples in and immediately playing with them. But then I think we've augmented that a lot with what else you're able to do in Flip.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, I love the immediacy and the sequenceability of the POKO. But I think you've sort of taken that what you're able to do there with your software with like envelopes and effects. Yeah, it's sort of beyond that, and also like the price point is amazing. I think you've really made that accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah, that was one of the other thoughts too, which is also why, I'm sad we couldn't do an Android release at the same time. It was really important for me at the beginning to make this as accessible as possible, but we're pretty we feel good about what it's looking like for Android. I don't want to promise anything, but we think we'll be able to do it eventually. And so basically it was about, focusing our energy and the costs to have a very good app and basically not having to develop two apps at once because the two platforms have their own requirements, of course. But then, we wanted to make it about $10 just to make this kind of music making more accessible to people.
Yeah, it's really great, man. It looks really, really cool. Unfortunately, my mobile phone is very much old technology.
Oh my gosh.
So I'll have to wait for the VST version or something. Cool, man. Yeah, I think what you do is really incredible, and you do cover from like your Weird Gear series. I really like the Weird Gear gear stuff.
I always want to do more of those, but I have doing that series, and I'm doing 4 producers, and I'm doing Theory Thursday now, and I don't know. I wish I could do one of each of these like every week.
Yeah. Have you ever seen there's a book called Electronic Toy Instruments? Have you ever seen that book?
No, haven't seen that.
Oh, you'd love it, man. It's loads of like a lot of Japanese like kids toys, but they're electronic musical instruments.
Oh, cool.
There's Japanese ones. There's also, I guess there's some other ones, but mostly they're just like way out electronic synths that are all like kids' toys.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, you'd love it, man. It'd be a great Christmas present for you. I'll find it and I'll put it in. I'll send you a link to it. It's really, really, that would be great for Weird Gear because some of that stuff's way out.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So you also have your Patreon.
Yeah, that's right. I've been on Patreon since almost the very beginning when it launched because I've followed Jack Conte. And I was just a fan of his music since the early days of YouTube. So when he announced that, I was like right on it.
Excellent. So what's the setup for anyone that follows you on Patreon? What do they get from doing that?
Yeah, I keep my Patreon pretty simple. It's just if you're a patron, I'll send you all the music that I ever release, and then keep you up to date on all the videos. And I will sometimes post the videos a bit early. And then it's at most 1 paid post per week. Like even if I do multiple videos in a week, I just kind of bundle them all into one post. And then there's a tier at $5 and up. I'd also send you any of the sample packs that I put out. And that's, often stuff that ends up happening in my videos. Like this past summer, I used a hydrophone, which is like a contact mic that can be put underwater, and I froze it and I boiled it.
That was amazing.
Yeah, so there's some bizarre sounds out of that. So like all those sounds right now are only available to those patrons. So stuff like that, it's a good time.
That's so cool, man. I love that idea. Like I just think you've got such an amazing way of finding ideas and just pulling things together. Like what have you been most surprised by in recording over the years that's created an amazing sound from perhaps a rather mundane or meaningless object?
I think the best one still is one of my early ones, which is using balloons. And I was touring Germany or about to tour Germany, and I was trying to think of a way to promote these German tour dates. So I was like, maybe I can cover a German song. And I don't know too many German songs, but 99 Luftballons or 99 Red Balloons, as the English-speaking world knows it, came to mind. And then I had been doing the occasional cover song where I would try to use an item mentioned in the song as an instrument. And so all of that came together here where I was like, well, maybe I could use only balloons to produce every sound I would need to do a cover of this song. And it sounds bonkers because it's so like squeaky and, there's all these popping sounds. It's definitely probably so few pieces of music in the history of the world have covered this particular frequency spectrum. Like it's just such a bizarre sound, but I was really pleasantly surprised at how versatile balloons can be, because you can like slowly let air out of them, you can pop them, you can scratch them, you can roll them up into kind of a string that you can pluck. So it was very, very fun and rewarding working with balloons. And I don't think any other item I've used has had that much, diversity sonically.
Yeah, I mean, an amazing thing. I think the joy and the adventure is translated so well in your videos, and that's a really, really good example of it. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of gas. There's like gear acquisitions. I've forgotten what the S stands for.
Yeah, syndrome.
syndrome, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of that, and I think it's wonderful that you're putting out a video with balloons in it. That a kid who's sort of in their teens can sit around and wow, I could do that. It's quite inspiring stuff.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think I'm glad that those videos work because I do really believe that music making should be and is a lot more accessible than maybe we tend to think about it as. And at the same time, of course, I'm getting sent all this cutting edge gear quite often, and I'm like working with rare or expensive things sometimes. And so I like that even though that is the case in a lot of my videos, I can also very clearly demonstrate that you don't really need much at all to have a good time and to create something that sounds good.
Definitely. And I think with artists like Billie Eilish, that style of production, it really opens it up to everyone to go, yeah, I don't need like this £16,000 synthesizer, I can just click my fingers and whisper into the mic, and obviously that's not all of it, but it's more accessible than ever.
I was also I had a little moment of I don't know. I was a tiny bit mad that they sampled that Australian crosswalk sound in was it Bad Guy, I think, because that's a sound that I remember loving when I was actually touring Australia at one point, and I was like, I've got to use that in a track. But I'm glad somebody did it and it became a huge hit.
That's amazing, man. I thought you were going to say you'd put it in one of your videos and she'd nick the idea and put it in her track.
No, can't. I
have a similar thing. Tuk-tuks in India.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like I love the sound of the tuk-tuks, but I had my portable recorder with me when I went to India, and I didn't for some reason ever get any recordings because they're so like rhythmical, but the accents of all of the rhythms are all totally changeable. So cool. It's super polymetric, polyrhythmic.
It'd be cool to get a whole bunch of tuk-tuks and create a piece live with them.
That would be amazing. Honestly, I used to sit in the back of Tuk Tuk just listen to this jazz music happening. It's they're really cool.
Did you spend a lot of time in India?
I travelled for about 5 or 6 months in India, and I also I did a thing called Workaway, which is like you do a full day's work and you get accommodation and food.
Nice.
So I worked in hotels. I worked as an English teacher out there. So yeah, it was good. Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, that's such a cool experience.
Yeah, it was great, man. It was really, really good. Outside of music, away from sort of music tech, what do you enjoy doing? What else do you enjoy doing?
I mean, I'm definitely pretty focused on music. It's just a few things, really. I do enjoy travel. We can't really do much of that this year, but when possible, love to just, explore a completely different type of place to what I'm used to. I feel like the things that I do are, I play a bit of chess now and then, play a bit of video games, and I like reading. And I can't even think. There's one other thing that I'm just exercising. These are my few little pastimes, I guess.
Nice, man. That's really cool. And congratulations on your baby that you announced.
Thank you so much. Oh yeah, very excited.
A couple of weeks ago. Yeah, very exciting. You got the first beat. Yeah.
It's really fun. just thinking that, I made this little piece of music with the heartbeat that we recorded, and one day she'll hear it and, understand what that means. And I mean, just, I don't know, thinking about what it's going to mean to have a kid and watch them grow up is just amazing.
Yeah, really fantastic, man. Really good. And your wife also, I don't know if she has the same surname now, but her surname was Bowser, right?
Yeah.
That's a great
she
computer game surname.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think she's been a big fan of that all her life.
Yeah, that's genius. That's so good. Do you have any like mantra or philosophy for life?
Not really, but I guess I don't have a cute, perfect way that I put it, but I've found in recent years that focusing on the joyful things is the best way through. And, it's, I think that's how I've shaped a lot of my content, and it's how I kind of decide how to prioritize my day. And I think that's been a big part of, I don't know, the energy that's translated into this audience that I've got, and also just my own enjoyment of life.
Definitely, man. Well, yeah, I think that joy and sense of wonder is definitely translated in your videos. Like, it's, they're really colorful, they're really engaging, they're really engrossing. So yeah, that is definitely translated in what you're doing.
Glad to hear.
I believe you've got do you have a bit of a team of people helping you?
Yeah, it's been kind of different at different times. When I was trying to do a lot of content, I had 2 video editors, and that's just because, like, so for example, for something like 4 producers, it's probably a full-time week of editing. Just to like have, because we have 3 producers and me doing a breakdown of a track, and those we usually edit them for the guests, and so some of them will send hours of footage. There was one person who live streamed their entire track creation, so we got like 20 something hours of footage from them. So wow. It really helps to have a couple other people to tackle that. Right now I just have one. My brother-in-law actually, who helps with just anything video related that I might need. So he does a bit of the editing. If there's ever like a moving camera where I'm in the shot, I'm not controlling the camera, that'll be him. And then he also, there's some times where I just like to do a really casual visual effect. Like there was one video where I just threw my guitar at the wall and it perfectly landed on its hanger. And so just things like that, I'm like, this will be so fun. And I don't know how to do it, but my brother-in-law is a genius at that kind of stuff. And he'll spend like half a day just working on that 3 seconds of this video. But I feel like stuff like that, throwing it in once in a while just keeps people on their toes and is real fun. So yeah, it's him helping with some of the editing. I always at least do a solid pass on every video because I just, it has to be in my voice. But then my wife is also on board just as like admin and management and helping to deal with all the emails that come in. And I have also a bit of help on the social media side of things. It's not always me posting. I mean, it often is, but I also have someone who just helps come up with post ideas and also does some of the actual like typing it into Instagram or Twitter and pressing send.
Oh God, man, that's a
so that's helpful.
That's a godsend.
It's really helpful because you think that stuff should be so fast, but actually, it can take half an hour, 45 minutes sometime to like get the thing up. It might not send through. You might have the picture in the wrong format. And then, there's all these things that actually take up your day.
I quit Twitter this year just because I felt like it was really taking a lot of my creative energy away. I was putting creative energy into that. So yeah, I really understand why you've done that sort of thing. And don't you find it mad when people are like, oh, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, like, people are now listing like they're on like 10 social media platforms. Like, where's your life? When does your life fit into this world?
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's nuts. I think it's a weird necessity in having a career as a creative these days, but I think you also can have a choice over which ones you're going to engage with or to how much. And yeah, I think, for some people, I think it's great that they just completely omit one of those major platforms, and you don't have to be on all of them.
Yeah, definitely, man. Just, to mention your 4 producers, 1 sample thing, it's such a brilliant idea. It works so well. Especially, I really enjoyed the last one, Cuckoo, Rachel K. Collier, and Jeremy from Red Rings Recording.
Jeremy. Yeah, though they're all so great. I mean, that series has been really fun to do, and I think it's just, it encapsulates almost everything about what I want to share about music, which is that a lot of different people can do it with a lot of different setups, and also everybody has their own kind of creative voice. And even if you start from the same place, the results are completely different, and I love being able to celebrate that.
Definitely, that is so true. It is, it's celebrating the creativity of each of those individuals, and also like the trajectories of that one sample goes in so many different directions, and it's a bit of a shout out for maybe companies like Splice or Loop Cloud, the way that some people would maybe belittle them for being like, pre-processed loops, but in actual fact, if you download a pre-processed loop and I download one and someone in Russia downloads one, we're all going to go on our own little journey with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fond of saying lately that a guitar or any instrument is kind of like a preset, I think, there's reasons why some people get the wrong idea about sampling, and there's probably examples of songs where the sampling was not creative at all, of course. But I think it's really the same kind of thing. You have a tool of some kind that allows you to express yourself, and you can be really creative with it, or you can kind of just like take it as it is, do what everyone else has already done with it, or make the obvious choice with it. I think it really is in the hands of each creative.
Absolutely. It's a superb idea, and it works really well, especially because they all go off into their channels and talk to their audience about the process as well. It's just, in terms of being like a YouTube content thing, it's just a winner for the audience all around. It's great, like if your audience love one particular producer's track, they can go in and see the detail on that. Hopefully it's not 27 hours long.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Nice, man. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me today, Andrew. It's been really, really good.
Yeah. Thank you for the invite. Yeah,
really I love what you do, and I'll put all of your links and things like that in the show notes and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Would it be possible to grab your hand clap sample and put it at the end so we could like high five at the end? Is that cool?
Oh yeah, we could just. I mean, I actually do it fresh each video. I just clap, and then I have the right room tone and everything.
Oh, no way, man. That's great.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
I'll give you one here.
Nice one. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot.
Oh, it was really good to speak to Andrew. He's an amazing guy, and he's really phenomenally talented in so many areas. I've got a lot of respect for the way that he incorporates sound design and synthesis and modular and production in his videos, and is able to walk those different paths very, very, very comfortably. Great, so please don't forget there is a GoFundMe page for the podcast. If you would like to donate a few pounds or dollars, it would be greatly appreciated. And next month in the new year, we are talking to a guitarist who is from the Welsh Valley about her amazing pieces of music. Thank you very much for listening. I'm midierror. Have a good, and I'll see you again soon.